Adolescence, second language acquisition, and identity. There have been studies that have looked at how adolescents construct their identity while they learn a second language. And what emerges is a very complex and dynamic picture as the learners of the second language follow the path of their learning. So there have been ethnographies of second language learners, and for an example, Chinese immigrants in USA high school have been studied. These Chinese immigrants in the US were seen to be caught in some conflicting discourses. Remember, we talked about how important language is in terms of identity construction, because it is in the discourses, that is, what is being said about somebody, a whole meaningful chunk of language, that is what we call a discourse. So how different kinds of discourses about them position them differently. So there are multiple discourses within which they are situated. There is this colonial or racialized discourse in which they are seen as other because they are not whites, and they are seen as deficient or awkward or somebody different from them, from the main white students. On the other hand, they are seen as model minorities. These are the discourses that celebrate the success of the Chinese in the American society. And then they are positioned in the discourse of this Chinese, being Chinese themselves, their own roots, these cultural nationalist discourses, then social discourses and academic discourses, how well or how poorly they do in the school they are in, and then this crisscrosses with gender-based discourses, their identity as males or females. So we see how identities are definitely fractured, multifaceted, and how dynamic or complex they are, and in what complex ways do they affect language learning. So it was seen that individuals managed their identities in language learning differently, with results that were different. So you had individuals who were very, very successful in learning the second language, that is English, and there were others who were not so successful, but it all really depended on their attitude, which was developed by their identities, or the we can say the identity which was more dominant that they possessed. You have this example of Almond, for instance, who did not do so well. So he had been there at this US school learning English for almost 1 year, but he still had poor English language literacy. And suddenly this child or this student becomes interested in computer-mediated learning. And in being interested in this computer-mediated learning, he develops a new identity and then nurtures these relationships. Suddenly he realizes that now he has some skills which are valuable, and he gets this high self-esteem, and he tries to renegotiate his identity within the student body. So Aman actually talks about his identity in a very interesting way, and he says there are actually two aspects of myself. And there are researchers who would agree with him. One aspect is the real aspect, saying what he is actually at the given moment, and the other aspect is the imagined one, in which he imagines an identity which is more persuasive, an identity which is more empowered, and then there is this identity which he sees, real identity, where he finds himself still struggling with different things or with higher positioning with his colleagues. And learning, finding a skill in which he is better motivates him to learn his English language skill and develop his English language skills and reposition himself and move towards the imagined identity that he has been envisaging for himself.